If you like tiny things and clothed animals having tea in the forest and fairies flying all over the place, then I think you're going to like this journal page. Hi friends, I'm Ashley. Welcome to Darling Cottage Diary. This week's episode is going to be about fairy letters. That was the theme that Ephemera Club chose. If you don't know what Ephemera Club is, it's just my monthly patron support, and I'll talk about that more later in the video, but I'm trying to do at least one episode every month that has to do with our collective prompt. And so I was also kind of inspired. I made this a long time ago when I was very much in my polymer clay era and I wanted to make everything tiny. And so it's been sitting on my desk and I realized I haven't showed it to y'all. And so that's kind of the theme we're going for, is just a forest fairy. And my vision for this was like, what if she had a little trunk at the end of her bed? And what would be inside that little trunk in her little home inside of a tree trunk or something? And so I wanted to make a journal page that looked like I was opening a trunk and looking down into it and then trying to think about what her little treasure box that she might keep things in. Because if you're on this page, I am assuming that you are also a child who liked little boxes and to keep little treasures that you either found outside or made for yourself, or toys that you got, or stationery that you had. I had tons of them as an adult. I still have them, hence everything you see on this channel. But so that was my thought. So to start off, I wanted to create this illusion of looking down into a little wooden box. And this journal, it already has this like dyed, earthen kind of look to it. So I didn't have to fully create something totally new out of like a white page. So if you are going to recreate this, I would suggest doing a tea or coffee stain on a normal white journal page. And then, or maybe if you have this kind of light beige brown colored paper, you can already put that down on top of your white page to start. But then I wanted to create a wood grain in 2 different colors to try to create the perspective illusion. And I like mixed media. I am all about the page coming to life and 3D elements coming out of it. I am not a painter. So yeah, you can be gentle with my perspective taking on this, but I'm just using some ink right now, and it's the same color ink I use throughout most of the video. I change when I'm doing the wood grain for the bottom of the trunk, but I'm using the workshop ink from the Fairy Tale collection with Ferris Wheel Press inks, and I'll put that link with a description in the description box, and then my code at the bottom of the page as well, which gives you 10% off of your total order. And you can reuse that code. You don't have to, it's not like a one-time use. You can keep using it. So anyway, continuing on with this, I wanted to make sure I had little knots in the wood, and then tried to just make it look as realistic as possible, as if it were a plank. And one thing that's really nice about drawing wood grain is it's so imperfect that it doesn't matter how bad you feel at it. It's always going to look good. And so if you've been on my channel at any kind of time, then you know that I like that slightly imperfect, natural, sometimes wonky look to things. I don't like stark lines. I don't like any kind of industrial look to anything. I like everything to be very flowy and natural and hobby. So moving on to the corners, I was just trying to shade it a little bit, give it a little bit of depth, and then of course the bottom of the box, the quote box, will be a darker shade to give the illusion of some shadowing. And then of course we'll be adding bits and bobs and fun little 3D elements and stickers and things on the bottom. It won't be on the sides because of course we're looking down into the box, and it was just, I wanted to keep the perspective as realistic as possible. And I guess I could have maybe folded some things to make it look like it was coming down the side of the box, but frankly this video is already getting long by the time I got to that point, so I didn't want to mess with it even more after that. And I will be releasing a video of this same journal page process, but it won't be sped up in these areas. So I like doing, when I do a voiceover video, I also like releasing the ASMR video, and that one will probably be about 45 minutes long instead of this one is 30, because I sped up quite a bit of the different parts, as well as cut out some of the more tedious parts, because I have found that my ASMR followers and subscribers love the longer ones because they like falling asleep to it, they like unwinding after work, they like just listening for all of the tingles and relaxation, and some of them use it for meditation, or work with me, study with me, craft with me, where it's more about the sounds and the slow meditative movements, whereas people who like my voiceovers, they just want to see the techniques and kind of the more end result parts. And so I try to cater to both types of subscribers. Anyway, moving on, I am using water to obviously water down the ink here, because that's something I've really enjoyed about using ink to paint. I've used inks far more than like watercolors or acrylics, because it's more of a stain, and I don't know, my brain just understands color palettes with stains better, and to my eye it looks more natural whenever I'm trying to create things like textures. This paper is so perfect for making like tree bark texture, for making, this is going to be like the lid, so I'm making little doors to open on top like it's an actual trunk or cupboard that we're going to be looking down into. And so obviously I wanted it to be wooden colored, similar to the background, and the variations in how deeply the ink stained different parts. I really love how that turned out. And then of course there's going to be a little bit of white coming through, and we'll fix that later with some chalk pastels. But for what I was going for, I really like how this turned out, because if I hadn't watered it down, it would have been too dark and it wouldn't have spread as well. So moving on to Ephemera Club, I wanted to explain that a little bit more. So my patrons, they vote every month on 3 different themes that I present, and I kind of give a vague idea of what I'm planning to create for them. And we have the digitals that I design and upload, and you can print those yourself as many times as you want, as well as these little parcels that I send that are an amalgamation of just any and all types of little flat tiny things that I can send in a regular envelope. I really push it with the post office. They get mad at me a lot because I try to fit so much into these little envelopes. But some things are like that bookmark or floating pocket, where it's just something that I've created myself and sewn together. Some things are just pretty papers that I find. Some things are digitally designed and printed from me. I usually have a sticker, at least one sticker that is handmade, and sometimes it's cut. If it has a clear background, I usually don't cut it in case you want to use it as like an exterior cover on a mini journal or something. But little pieces of ribbon. This one in particular, this is a design. Actually, all of those designs are ones that I created. This was an antique magazine cover that I found and added wings for the fairy. This was from a 1920s book. And this is just a little I don't think it's even vintage. It was just a second-hand book that I found. It had some water damage on it, but it had a lot of these really cute fairy illustrations that I wanted everybody to have. I didn't quite know what I was going to make it into, because it could be a little journal, a mini journal cover. It could be just a regular envelope. It could be a number of things. And then as I was working on this, I was like, you know what? I could make a little backpack out of this. It would be so cute. So, because the other side is just plain white, and you can do whatever you want with that. But the inside, I guess you could make this the outside if you wanted to, but the words would be upside down on the lid. But I figured, it'd be just this like surprise of this cute little fairy couple on the inside with incandescently happy, which is one of my favorite lines from Pride and Prejudice. And I was like, oh, it looks like a tiny little backpack. I'm going to make a pretty design on the outside, which I'll show you how to decoupage this in just a second with the tissue paper that also came with this. But my primary excitement with making this whole thing, that little backpack is what inspired this whole trunk idea, because of course a tiny fairy would have a tiny backpack in her tiny trunk in a tree. So all of the sparkles and everything, I wanted to just get inside my little fairy pouch. I'll also link above and below how to make this. I also make these and sell these with little cute charms in them in my shop, but if you want to just make the pouch yourself, I do have a tutorial on that, because it's very fun to keep all of your tiny shinies in for adding into your journals. It's just cute, and it keeps things organized. So those stamps, those green stamps, I was so excited they had enough for everybody, because that's the issue when I find something really pretty that's vintage or antique. There usually aren't enough for me to send out the actual things to everybody. I usually turn it into a printable or kind of redesign it a little bit and have it fit the theme. But those, I could actually send you the real things that are from, but they had different time periods on them, but they ranged from like the 20s to the 40s. And these tiny little envelopes, this is just a punch that I have, but all of the flowery papers I found were really pretty. So I was like, you know what, if a fairy is going to send a letter, it's going to be that size in pretty flower paper. So the backpack, I wanted to decoupage on the back, and this is just a little mixture of water and glue. I've used this several times in other videos, and I can link the more explicit directions below as well. But you could also use whatever matte medium that you want. I would just suggest watering it down, because if you don't, it doesn't look right. When you use tissue paper or napkins, it's so frail and pliable that I've had it rip if I haven't watered down the matte medium. So that's and there's no particular ratio. You can just dip your paintbrush in water and then the matte medium, and then just kind of keep going back and forth, and that will create the correct consistency. And of course you can keep working at it until you get all of those little wrinkles out. I don't mind the wrinkles, because I think it looks more realistic as far as if this were pretending to be a fabric backpack. Fabric gets wrinkled. So I'm usually okay with the wrinkles. I like the extra texture, but fortunately that square fit everybody's just enough. So while that dries, this lid of our trunk dried, and I wanted to add in just a little bit of detailing and try to cover up the more obvious white spots with some chalk pastels. If you missed the episode where I showed you how to make that pastel tin, it's just out of a regular mint tin, and I'll link that video as well. I like not just my journals to be pretty. I like all of my things to be aesthetic. It just makes me happy. So if you are also aesthetic trash like me, you may come along this journey. Put it in the comments if you are, what is the thing that you just really like to have aesthetic, even if the rest of your life is messy. What is the one thing that makes you happy? Like, do you have a pretty, vanity with all your makeup set out, or your kitchen is really cute. Like, what is your thing that has to be aesthetic to make your brain feel good? So I included these tiny, tiny, tiny dried flowers. I hope they make them to everybody without being completely crushed. They seemed pretty bouncy, so I'm really hoping they make it to y'all in good condition. But I just thought with the rest of that little tissue paper, it'd be perfect to make a tiny bouquet, because maybe our fairy in her trunk, maybe she has an admirer, and he gave her some flowers, or maybe she picked them herself and just wanted to keep them pretty. And so I thought that would be a cute little extra thing to put in the bottom of the trunk, because that's a memento that is really big for me. I love keeping dried flowers. I think dried flowers are just as pretty as fresh flowers in their own way, very Persephone and like eternal spring and goddess of death kind of way. So I have decorations of both fresh and dried flowers all over my house. And especially if somebody gives me a bouquet or gives me flowers, like I saved my prom corsages, and every time my boyfriend gives me a bouquet for whatever reason, I always dry and save at least one or a couple of the flowers and add them around, because there's something too, I think, adding, I don't know, objects hold memories, and objects hold energy, I guess is a good word. They have a spirit to them. At least they do for me. Maybe I'm just very sensitive, but I feel like when, you're gifted something by somebody, or you have something that holds a lot of sentimental value for it, it gives back to you in a way. I don't know. I'm just probably being sentimental, but let me know if that is the same for you, because I can't be the only one, especially if you're a journaler. Like, you like physical media, you like keeping things and memories and being able to revisit them. I think it's so important. I went back and forth on how to create the lid and the handles and everything. I thought maybe I should just do one big one that kind of opened upward like a lot of end of the bed trunks do, but it was going to be difficult and not look quite right because of the book closing in the middle. And so I thought I'll have like cabinet doors open. And then I realized, this journal is already thick. She's a thick baby, and I didn't want to have the handles be parallel to each other and mirror each other, because it would be even harder to close this poor journal. So I did offset them. I am sorry if that bothers you. It bothers me a little bit, but I tried to get them at least equidistant apart, just to make it easier to close the journal. But I think it still looks cute, and these are some little metal pieces that I've accumulated. Y'all know I'm one of those people who I see craft supplies and I'm like, I will use that for something. I don't know yet, but I will have it. That is the hoarder in me, but it is okay, because as long as I use it, it's okay. And the little handle pieces, that's in this most recent mixture of the walnut confetti, and I love them so much. I try to make sure I have those in every round of mixture because they're so useful for so many things. And then I thought, on top of this pretty little trunk, she would probably have some ferns or moss growing, or just, decoupaged on there herself, because if you live in a little fairy hole, you are going to have things decorated with pretty leaves that you find. It just made sense to my brain. And so this is just double-sided tape that I'm going to use to adhere the doors to the top of the page, but so that they weren't sitting open the whole time, I decided to just add the tape, and then was like, okay, I should probably fill the trunk quote, fill the trunk first so that I'm not fighting the doors trying to close on me the whole time that I'm doing this part of the journaling. So but with this one, because everything was I was trying to make it optically illusionary with, how I painted everything for the trunk itself on the background. I wanted everything else to be very 3D. And I could not believe in this book as I was going through it that it had one of the illustrations be this little walnut box, because if y'all have been following me, the walnut box, confetti box, is like a signature of my channel, and I freaking love walnut boxes. I've made them since I was a kid, and it's something that I've always done, and it was a very sweet moment coming across that of like, obviously other kids have that, but I don't know, it's just one of those things that's special to me. So I was super excited to be able to use that little illustration in the bottom of her box of maybe in the story, I was reading the page around it, and the fairies had had an adventure with whatever human that they had come to, and they had left her some notes, and one of them left one in a walnut box and the other two left them in acorn shells. And so I don't know, I was just like, okay, well, maybe this is the fairy who hasn't dropped off her little walnut letter to her human yet, or maybe a human left it for her. And then I thought, I like snacks. I always like having snacks, and I feel like a fairy would have a strawberry which would look giant in her trunk because she's tiny. So I was like, oh, this is the perfect size, and she'd probably have it in a little tub or a little cup that she found. And so I just decided to cut off part of this so I could just use the tub to make it look like she had the strawberry in this little canister. Designing this, I had the idea that maybe this could be the cover of a magazine for a fairy, and it's almost the perfect size for making into, those little journals that you can make out of a single sheet of paper, like printer paper, and you just fold it and cut it certain ways. I'll have to do that in a future video because it just felt like it was going to be the perfect size for that, but I didn't want to add even more bulk to this page. So I decided to leave it flat and just remind myself that it's a little magazine, and I just can't tell that it is because I'm looking down into the trunk. And then these little dried flowers, I've had them for I don't even know how long. I was like, you know what? These maybe are flowers that she picked for herself and she just kind of put in her trunk. And then the bouquet that we made earlier in the paper, that one's from like an admirer or someone who's courting her or something. So we have a plethora of dried flowers. And the tape I wanted to cover because those little flowers were fidgety trying to get to stay on there. So I used the tape for ease and then covered it with the little walnut. And these are just little crystal stickers that I've had, and they have a little layer of resin on them, so they're a little bit 3D and extra shiny. And I thought, she'd probably collect shiny rocks because I am not a fairy and I collect shiny rocks. This fabric little strip, this little fabric ribbon is so soft. It's just this little crushed velvet kind of crushed velvet texture, and it made me think maybe she was out foraging as fairies do, and they like to play tricks on us, and maybe she saw some human's sash laying in the yard or on her windowsill, and she clipped her a piece for a little blanket or a little shawl, and then add our little flowers. And this butterfly ribbon was so pretty, but I wanted just the single butterfly to go in here as maybe, a little something she made for herself, just a little toy that she made for herself. And of course we have to have our mushrooms because we can't have fairies without toadstools. And maybe this one is just one that she thought was pretty and wanted to keep for herself. And so that was all that I wanted to fill her trunk with. I really kind of ran out of space and I didn't want to layer anymore because obviously bulky. So went ahead and just added my little doors. The double-sided tape worked really well for this. I was kind of surprised. It's really strong. It's the one that I have listed in the set that I have listed in my Amazon storefront. But I use it for quite a lot actually, and it made this come to life very well. You forgot about the backpack, didn't you? Because I forgot about the backpack right up until I finished and closed that door and saw that it was done drying. So I had plans to actually glue this onto the page, but because I had already filled up the bottom, I was like, you know what, this is just going to be something that's tucked in there. It's like she got home from fairy school and just threw her backpack in there. And I also had these little leaf decorations from the torn out page and thought that would be cute to decorate her trunk with as well. But the backpack, it's just going to be a free agent, and I figured it would be good to just cut a little slit in it so that I could make it a little self-closing envelope, and then add some crocheted ribbon that our fairy probably crocheted herself for the straps, and a little tiny crystal that looks like it might be a button that is the closure for her backpack. So I just wanted to make, of course, just make it extra cute, because if you can, make it cute, right? So I'm just using some quick drying craft glue. It's one of those acetone based craft glues. I love using that because even though the smell is strong, it dries very quickly, and similar to hot glue, but you don't burn your fingers. It's probably not good to breathe in as much as I do, but you know, sacrifice for the art, right? So the little pink chunks, the little pink flowers, and the little diamonds and stuff, I put a little sprinkle of that in everybody's Ephemera Club parcel. Hopefully they don't get sent back to me for being too thick by the post office, but we're gonna hope. We're gonna hope that they go through to everybody. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this video, this episode. I know it was kind of a long one, but hopefully it was a good thing. I didn't mean for this to be such an involved page, but it did end up being, it took several hours to make this, but it was time very well spent. I felt so relaxed after I was done making this. So leave me a little fairy emoji or a toadstool emoji in the comments, and let me know if you would like to learn how to make a little mini folded page or a journal next week. I'm also maybe thinking about doing an underconsumption type of series, because I know a lot of people are strapped right now, and I do get comments about I'd love to journal, but I can't because it's expensive, and I kind of want to myth bust that. So if you would like to see something like that, please let me know in the comments. And any fairy experiences that you had growing up, I definitely want to hear. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful week. I will see you next week. Bye, friends.